Hey, so I want to talk about Merck. That's ticker symbol MRK. This is a new company that I want to follow going forward. The way I found this one is I saw the health sector was doing normally better than the other segments, and I looked at the top five holdings in I believe it's the XLV sector. And Merck just was a company that popped to me when I looked at the top holdings in that ETF. So, I'm going to be learning this. And, well, let's just go into it. So, I have some news. So, again, I just went back to about a month. I went back in time to about like the beginning of June. And we're just going to start there and we're going to start seeing just what's going on. So, uh, the news that we're going to cover is roughly about 2 months worth of Merck, and then we'll shift into the technical analysis and pretty much start from scratch here. So let's just get into it. So one thing that happened, this was more in June, it looks like. Uh, Merck completed an acquisition of Prometheus Bioscience Inc. This acquisition, per Robert Davis, their CEO, mentioned that Prometheus acquisition accelerates their growing presence in immunology, augments our diverse pipeline, and increases our ability to deliver patient value. So we will see how that gets incorporated, especially when they have their next financial statements released. We'll see how this kind of flows in and uh, possibly get an idea of what we can expect from this acquisition in terms of revenue and whatnot. Next, we had a Merck's Keytruda, hopefully I'm saying that correctly, fails to meet one main goal in its gastric cancer trial. This blockbuster immunotherapy Keytruda failed to meet one of the two main goals in a late stage study testing it as a treatment option for a type of advanced gastric cancer. So, as I've kind of gotten into this, it seems like they had a, a large amount of Keytruda tests that were going on. This is one of them, and we're going to touch on another one uh, shortly. But this one, again, so it mentions the gastric cancer. So this is around your stomach region. This is in combination with a chemotherapy. This this Keytruda test was in combination with chemotherapy significantly reduces the signs of cancer compared to chemotherapy alone. So that's good. But where they failed, because they said they failed of one of the two, so where they failed is the combination failed to achieve statistical significance in the second main goal of extending the time a patient remains free of certain complications or events that treatment was intended to prevent or delay. So they were hoping for both of these things to work. They got the one, but not the other. So we'll see if they kind of fine tweak this one because it seems like they were close, and I would imagine they would want to make this available considering they passed that first test. Um, but yeah, we'll see how this plays out. Next, we have Merck takes the HHS, which is in this case the Department of Health and Human Services, to court over IRA drug pricing rule. So, just a little more background. So, they're suing this Department of Health and Human Resources to block a Medicare drug price negotiation. The pharmaceutical industry claims negotiating prices of its products with the government health plan for Americans age 65 and older will curtail profits and compel them to pull back on developing groundbreaking new treatments. So basically, they've been making their own price, but now with, uh, I guess, the health and human services, especially for those older aged people, 65 and older, um, this is potentially going to bring the prices down on a lot of products, which, depending on which side you're on, uh, is good or bad. Obviously, if you want these medicines, this is great. If you want the company to keep making great profits, then you don't like this. But hopefully, they find like a middle ground where both people uh, can get what they want, because this is, we want both parties to win here. No reason for one to lose and the other to win. Um, so we'll see how that goes. Um, we might touch on it later, uh, but just in case we don't, um, apparently Merck is going to be suing them off to the side, uh, and just like the title says. But there's talks of like other healthcare type companies coming together to fight this, uh, from like smaller companies to larger ones. And Merck, because they're one of the larger ones, they're gonna have like their own battles. So based on the types of treatments they're giving, they might not be as impacted as maybe the smaller companies. We'll of course see how it plays out. Next, we have Merck was accused of underplaying mental health risks for an asthma and allergy drug called Singulair. Back in 1998, that's when it came out. They claimed it claimed side effects were mild and similar to a placebo. Uh, but apparently, over the last 2 decades, reports suggest that patients, including children, died from suicide or experienced neuropsychiatric issues after taking the drug. In 2020, the FDA mandated a black box warning for this drug. Um, a lot to take in. I don't know if it was just. I have to imagine clearly it met the standards of the time, and now that kind of the science has improved over these 20, 25 years, things just we're able to see more clearly. So at this point, I'm wondering, will Merck kind of fine tune this treatment, or are they just going to leave it as it is and it's kind of like at your own risk? I mean, clearly, I, I mean, I guess it doesn't state any figures, but I guess the margin of error might be low enough. I mean, clearly it's low enough that the FDA is willing to allow it to stay on the shelves. It's just they have now this black box, which is like a warning to potential purchasers that, hey, this one is um, take at your own risk type of situation, almost like cigarettes. I hopefully that's like a good comparison here, where clearly it's marked, it's bad, or at least has the potential to be bad. No guarantee, you know, there's people that smoke all their life, nothing ever happens to them, but obviously some people, it's very harmful. But let's move on. So Merck is apparently withdrawing a COVID drug application in the EU. They had withdrawn this COVID-19 pill application in the European Union months after the region's regulator did not back the drug, citing for insufficient data, which is interesting. So just to continue on, it was committed to continue. So Merck's committed to continue what this drug or pill was called, Lagavrio, through compassionate or emergency use programs authorized by individual EU member states. So clearly, the EU as a whole, uh, they just didn't see enough sightings to note that, yeah, this is good. We want it to go through. They didn't see enough data, so all they did was put it on pause. But I guess Merck, um, I don't mention it here. Oh, okay. The second piece talks about uh, Lagavrio is authorized as a COVID treatment for high-risk patients in more than 25 countries, including Australia, Japan, US, UK, and China. But its sales have slumped recently as cases have declined. So I think that's kind of what happened here is they got a little pushback. They thought they were good enough to just go through, but clearly the EU felt they did not have enough data. And Merck, I think just based on this last piece, how sales have been slumping and likely will continue down that path, they just figured, we don't need this. Maybe just over time, naturally, it'll kind of emerge. But I guess they have enough uh, of the population that they need to make whatever what they currently are making, and where it's legal, or I guess, allowed, they have enough coverage that they're okay with, okay, we don't need this. Because otherwise, yeah, I would imagine they'd want to continue this. But yeah, I guess I would imagine what one scenario would be is they're not allowed right now because it's still being sold in other countries. Clearly, they're going to be tracking this, and once they have enough support, they might just reapply and go easily through, and they'll be fine. But next we have their second quarter for 2023. Their financial statements are going to be coming out on August 1st, so that'll be our first kind of just look at this company in an in-depth type of way, especially in terms of income statement, balance sheet, and I'm excited to do that. This last piece before we switch into the technicals is, as I mentioned, they had a couple of these Keytruda type of tests, and so this is a separate one. So they announced actually just yesterday that phase 3 Keynote A18, I forget what the other one was, but it had a similar coding, maybe like a K57 or something. But this one, A18, the trial met primary endpoint of progression-free survival in patients. So I'm not really familiar with that term. So by all means, if you can kind of explain that. But anyway, so this is for patients with cervical type cancer, and apparently it met its endpoint. Like, I don't know if there were other points that they were looking at, or if this was just a one-purpose type of test, and it passed, and now it's going to move on. So I'm not sure how much weight I want to put behind this, but any good passing point for a treatment like this, we're going to celebrate that. Again, I'm just not sure how far down the pipeline it is in terms of will this be out to the market, or so not sure how quickly we would see the results of something like this. But again, one step at a time with something like this. And so again, to wrap this one up, at a pre-specified interim analysis conducted by an independent data monitoring committee, Keytruda, in combination with a concurrent chemoradiotherapy, showed a statistically significant and clinically meaningful improvement in PFS versus concurrent chemoradiotherapy alone. So this had as it mentioned, a significant and meaningful improvement. Of course, we like to see that. So again, we'll keep following this, probably circle back on this in a month. But now let's pivot into the technical analysis here. So I have not looked at this. Let me get that back up here. So I've not looked at this company before, but right off the bat, it's trading at 108. So I do have a tracker on the side. I'm going to be just filling it in as we go along. And yeah. So let me do this. I'm just putting in the name and everything. So we're set here. And then the 108. Okay, so what I've done in the past when starting from scratch here is, number one, I like to look at just what's it been doing this year, especially since we're about halfway through this year, a little past that actually. So if we just go back in time to about, I'm just going to plug in some lines just like I've done in the past. So that is representing the low for 2013. I'm going to add in what is apparently the peak right now for 2013 or 2023. In terms of a kind of like a resistance point right now, it would be around here-ish. So we'll make that red. In terms of a buy point, like in terms of support, it does seem like there's a little bit here. So I'm going to put in right about here. seems good in terms of support. And then any other like intermediary things that I'm seeing could be support or resistance. We do see a little bit of a peak here, so that could be potentially um, resistance. So I might do that, put in a horizontal line here. We'll make it blue. Um, make that blue, and I think I'm going to just make it like a half because there's not too much. I guess there is like a little bit of resistance here and also support, so I'm comfortable with that point. So now let's scroll back out. Let's bring in 2022. So looking at 22, which is right down here at the bottom, and I'll zoom in a little bit. So down here is 22 in the bottom left corner. I'm seeing a uptrend here. So let's just pick out, where are we? About here. And I'm just going to try to pick out a spot here. And I'm going to make this purple, just like we've done in the past. I'll make the line a little bit thicker for us. Let's see. So we could say something. Whoops. I thought I could move that. Let's see. Can I? Or do I have to grab the whole thing? Yeah, okay, here we go. So we could put something in like that, and I'm going to bring this out till about the end of September. Okay, so that seems to be the bottom most of the time. Yes, it pulled down to here, and that's kind of in line. If we were to drag this down, that's kind of in line. But this seems like the real spot, to me at least. And then if we were to put a top on this, I don't know if I can copy this line. Can I duplicate it? No. If we add in another trend line here, we'll grab the top, and we're just going to try to match that, make it parallel to the most part. Let me pull that up just a little bit. In terms of the tops, I'm going to give this one, whoops, I'm going to bring it up just a little bit more. So that's kind of the range. So I see we're still in an uptrend. We might have broken it at this point, based on going back to 22. From the beginning of 22, we've been in this uptrend. We've overachieved, I guess, twice. Once in December going into January of this year, December of last year, January of this year. For like a couple months, we actually were overachieving. Ultimately, we pulled back, then kept going forward. And then in terms of the opposite, we had one break below in September going into October of last year. And today, we are now breaking that trend. I would honestly give this one another month to see if it can kind of get back up. I think once we get the next earning report, we'll kind of see what's going on there. And I just want to go back just a little bit more, going back to 2021. So let me zoom in a little bit. Let me get that. So going back to 2021, which is more or less in the bottom of the left. So right about here is when the year started. So it's been kind of flat. All of 21, it was flat. Then 22, it accelerated, and that's where we are. So let's just zoom out a little bit more, just to get a whole picture here. So, yeah, I mean, this one took off really big. So I'm going to add in some parallel lines here. I just want to see if there's something here or not. Something like that. So that's kind of one. I'm going to make that, I guess, lighter purple, just so I'm kind of aware. So I would say we were on like a nice trend here from 2009, late 2008, all the way up till about 2020 or 2021, and then all of a sudden we just shot off. So, very interesting. This one could pull back a lot. Um, hmm. So, well, just to kind of start this off, I'm going to draw in two notes here. So going back to about December of 22, since December has consolidated between, what do we got? Roughly like 105 to 115. Yes, there's a couple times where it dropped down to like 101, and there's one time where it went up to 116, but that's more or less what it is. We're also seeing a strong uptrend since, let's see, January. Since January of 2022. Man, it is pretty strong. Okay. May have broken uptrend. Also, there's a long-term uptrend, which currently it's far exceeding that. Long-term uptrend, that one began, when did we say? Back in what? Pretty long ago, about 2008. Also long-term uptrend. Oops. Since, I'm going to say August 2008, which currently it's far exceeding. Okay, I'm comfortable with that. Why is that doing that? Okay. Anything else here? That's fine, that's fine. Okay. So I guess in terms of buy points for this one, there's three. We have the bottom of this strong uptrend, and just to kind of forecast us out to about like mid-August, because that's when I'm hoping to get back to this one. We're looking at about 116. So 116 would be like the most I could argue is fair. We also have that green line that we put in at 105. And then the final one would be all the way down here at like 76. I think right now, I guess I'll put it in, but it's so far away that's not really what I'm looking at. I'm looking at 105 right now, so I'm going to make that bold for us. In terms of resistance on this one, doing the same exact thing, but taking the top half. Let me get this off. Looking at the top half, roughly a month out, around 126. We have 115. So let me put these in. 126. Whoops. We have 115. And then at the very bottom, we have about 77. Or I'm sorry, we want the top. So we're looking at about 87. So right now, I would say it's not bad. I would say it's pretty close to a buy point. Because we're so fresh into this, I'm probably going to throw in a share, buy one share of this. So I'm going to mark it green, mainly because it's at the consolidation period. It's down at what's arguably the peak. Even if it fell to like 103, 102, just more reason to maybe pick up another share. But if this one broke below 101, that's when I would start to get worried. Right now, there's still potential that it could pull back into that uptrend. I think we'll have our answer once we see their financial statements, but I feel like they're going to be as expected, which is kind of strong. Uh, but yeah, that pretty much wraps this up. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer those. But if you want to add anything, just more insight that because again, we're very new to this, that'd be very helpful. So yeah, just a quick recap before we go. So Merck, currently it's at 108. My buy points are 76, 105, and 116. 105 is the point of interest right now in terms of buying. We're so close to it that I'm willing to at least open a position in this one. So I'm giving it a green. It's a good buy in my opinion at this point. We have resistance at 87, 115, and 126. And 115 is that consolidation range between 105 and 115. So 115 is my point of interest right now. And yeah, so we noticed a couple things. We noticed since December of 22, it's been consolidating between that range, 105 and 115. We also noted this strong uptrend since January of 22, which it may have broken that uptrend. And that uptrend again would be between 116 and 126. We're $8 off of that at this point. And then we also noticed a long-term uptrend that started back in August of 2008, and it's currently far exceeding that one. And that would be those low numbers that we have in there, the double digits. That range at this point, it could pull back to 76 to 87, and it would still technically be in an uptrend. It would just be the more conservative uptrend. But right now, we're just going to kind of get our toes wet, I suppose, in this one. And over time, if we see better opportunities or, we'll just keep following it and see how it goes. But yeah, that wraps this up. So please like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.